Good Friday morning, y'all. It's about 8 o'clock here. So this is going to be part 2 of Colonial America. In today's part, we're going to look at the 13 colonies into themselves. So what are the 13 colonies? Well, if you remember from the last video, I said North America was primarily colonized by 3 European countries. Those 3 would have been Spain, which has taken over South Central America and pretty much Florida and the West Coast. France, they pretty much took over parts of Canada, around the Great Lakes, and along the Mississippi River. Then you have England, which pretty much took over the east coast of the modern day United States. That's what you see on the board behind me. Is these colonies right here? They'll eventually become states, as you know. But we'll get into them. So the reason why these English colonies got started in the first place, we all remember Christopher Columbus. He discovered the New World. Well, with the New World brought new opportunities. With those new opportunities, people found a lot of motivation to go explore, go try this New World. Pardon, I always got interruptions.
Good morning, teachers. I want to let everybody know we will have a whole staff faculty meeting at 2:30 today in the cafeteria. Thank you.
Maybe 2:30. All right, but like I was saying, there's many reasons why these 13 colonies were established for England. We're going to take a look at 2 in particular. The first reason will be for religious reasons. Now, to rewind a little bit, back in England, there's a lot of confusion, chaos in the religious aspect over there. A lot of folks are unhappy with the state church, because in England they had a state-recognized church, meaning like the official religion of Britain was the Church of England, also known as the Anglican Church. There'll be a lot of people who disagree with how the Anglican Church, also known as the Church of England, did things. 2 groups in particular that we like to focus on in the 13 colonies would be the Puritans and the Pilgrims. Like I said, the difference between the 2 is the Puritans. I have it on the board. Still getting used to teaching behind me. The Puritans wanted to purify the church, so they're trying to fix the Church of England. While on the other hand, you have the Pilgrims. The Pilgrims, on the other hand, are considered separatists. That's a big fancy word for us historians. They are separatists. Puritans are trying to purify. Pilgrims are trying to separate and start their own church. This will also be where the Thanksgiving legend comes from about. I'm sure you all have seen where Pilgrims and the Indians are sitting around having a good Thanksgiving meal together. That's where that comes from. It comes from the Pilgrims. They received help from Native Americans because they were struggling in their first winters here in North America. Somerset and Squanto would be some Indian names you might recognize that helped them out. But the big thing from the Pilgrims is when they were on their way over here, when they was coming across this, let me get my pointer out, when they was coming across the ocean and they decided to land up here and set up their colony, they did something on a boat. That boat that they came on was called the Mayflower. I'm sure you've heard of the Mayflower. If not, it's an important boat, the Mayflower. But while on that Mayflower, they would sign something called the Mayflower Compact. And pretty much to sum up what they was trying to do is everybody's trying to get in agreement. Is when they came to this new world, that they would have laws and that they would function like a civilized society. So the big thing is everybody would function for the general good of the colony. For the general good of the colony. That sentiment would resonate throughout the 13 colonies. Manifest itself, and you'll see that manifest itself in our Declaration of Independence, our Federation, the U.S. Constitution. But the idea that we should act and behave in society that would benefit others, meaning you shouldn't go out and be reckless, cause harm, or grief, or any kind of wrongdoing to somebody else. You should be civilized in your regards. That's with the Mayflower. Eventually, word would go back to England, and this would become a hotbed for the Puritans. There'd be about 15,000 Puritans coming across the ocean over the next couple of decades. They would settle up in the New England area. Once again, as historians, we like to break down the 13 colonies into 3 distinct groups. You have the New England colonies, which you see here in yellow. You have the middle colonies, which you see here in purple. And you got the southern colonies, which you see here in green. Three distinct layers. But also, since religion was such an aspect, pretty much, you see all these yellow up here, they would almost disagree with each other in church and separate and make their own communities. That's pretty much the story with all these colonies up here in the yellow. Connecticut formed its own. People didn't like how Connecticut were doing things, so they would go to Rhode Island, establish Rhode Island, and make their own laws there. But typically, the further north you go in the 13 colonies, the more that religion played an aspect in the reason why people wanted to come to the New World. Let's talk about the second aspect, the reason why people would come to the New World. The second reason why is because people, who doesn't like this, but because people want to make money. There's opportunity in the New World, and a lot of folks that seek this opportunity were kind of folks who were down on their luck back in England. This might be folks that are jobless, homeless, may have just got out of jail, or just can't find those kinds of folks looking for a fresh start. They can find their fresh start in the New World. It's going to be hard, but that's the reason why a lot of people did that. And they knew a lot of folks were looking for a fresh start, so the upper classes of society, they would get together and buy these joint stock companies, and these joint stock companies would come over to North America and establish essentially businesses and start making money for the home countries back in Europe. We call that policy mercantilism. We'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow in part 3. But essentially right now what you need to know is there's a bunch of businesses in England who would like to make a lot of money in North America. And they're going to do this by establishing joint stock companies. Now you might be asking yourself what a joint stock company is. All a joint stock company is where more than one person go in on something together. Say for instance, I want to buy 500 acres of land. I could afford that. Not personally, but this is hypothetical. Say I could afford that, but it would take every single dollar I had in the bank to buy that. And let's say that 500 acres turned out to be a bad plot of land. Well, I've just lost all my money. Well, if I went in with a buddy, let's say maybe 4 other friends, instead of having, I would only have to pay 20% of that. I might only get 20% of the return, but I don't have to risk losing everything. You go in together and you share the profits together. That's why it's kind of like how you don't have all your eggs in one basket. If you've ever heard that expression, that's the whole concept of joint stock company. Is pretty much so you don't have all your eggs in one basket. But all these businessmen, they would set up various companies. Hopefully you can see my screen here. I know it's a little hard to see. I wonder if I can adjust the camera. Well, anyway, I'll try to get up here. But the examples of some colonies that were established by joint stock companies would be Virginia. I know you probably can't see it, but it would be Virginia by the London Company. You have Delaware. They set up by the New Sweden Company. Various other Carolinas will break off pretty much to be a minor colony under Virginia. But these colonies will be set up by essentially these companies, and these companies will be trying to make money, send it back to Europe. The way these guys will make money is a lot of these southern colonies, that's where a lot of these joint stock companies would come from. These southern colonies, right here in green, they would make their money off agriculture. By agriculture, I just mean farming. The kind of crops that they were growing down there is what we consider a cash crop. If you want to know the difference between a cash crop and a crop, you can't eat cash crops. I mean, I guess you could, but they're not good for you. What I mean by cash crops are things like tobacco. I mean, the human cannot survive on tobacco, but it makes a lot of money. That's why people grow it. And indigo, believe it or not, indigo, they especially down in the Carolinas, like right there between the North Carolina and South Carolina border of today, they grow a lot of indigo and rice in that area. I mean, you can eat rice, but indigo. It was very hard to make the color purple for a long while. A little tidbit about purple: it used to weigh more by the pound than gold back in the Roman days. Purple's very hard to make, so those making indigo down there in the Carolinas, yeah, just trying to make money. Now, Virginia, Maryland, they'd mostly be off tobacco. Carolina would be indigo and rice. Now, Georgia, they would be also in the agriculture game, but a lot of it tended to be where Britain would send their undesirables or prisoners to say they have nothing else to do with them, so they just kind of pardon them and send them to the New World and wish them luck. Sometimes the undesirables from all these colonies up here, Georgia kind of became a home for them, for all the misfits and outcasts. Yeah, that's 13 colonies. Quick. Trying to think if I forgot anything. Just to recap what's going on in the Americas at this time. Let me get my handy dandy map. Hopefully y'all can see that. So you have these 13 colonies that we just talked about, established about right here. You have Spain, there's Portugal, but pretty much Spain, they all have control of all South America and Central America. And don't forget about Florida and the West Coast. France, where they came in through the St. Lawrence, they'd be around the Great Rivers area and the Mississippi River. My question is to you is, how do you think these English colonists are going to interact with these French settlements that are along the Mississippi River and Great Lakes area? And keep in mind, this area right here, the Ohio River Valley, it is highly contested. The Indians are living here, various Indian tribes. Keep in mind, they are Africans coming over to the Americas, many as slaves. So you have a melting pot of all these new cultures, for pretty much for the first time in human history. All this become a melting pot for, you got Germans, you got Irish, English, Polish, Italians, pretty much every European country you can think of. Various parts of Africa, especially from the Central and West Africa. You have some Indians that are, long story short, they would not end up being America's choice of slave because their bodies could not handle the diseases Europeans brought over, so that's why they resorted to using Africans for slaves. But a lot of Native Americans from South America would find their way up here in the Caribbean, up here in the North America. I'm rambling here now. I'm losing my track of thought, but just to recap, England, they would have their 13 colonies set up through here. Many reasons why they were set up, but the two big ones we talked about today were religious and monetary reasons. They had problems with the Church of England. They'd either want to try to fix it, purify it, or they were trying to start their own church, or separate. They were separatists, the Pilgrims. Keep in mind, all these are Protestant in nature. Catholics don't really have a strong hold in the Americas until right around Baltimore and Maryland, that area. You'll see Catholics sort of around through here, but for the most part, you can group everybody as a Protestant, but that doesn't mean everybody was the same time Protestant, if that makes sense. Also, monetary values. Rich folk in England are trying to make money off the New World. The poor folk are trying to get a start on their new life. So you'll see all these joint stock companies start rising, or popping up. Move my map out of the way. Hopefully I'll knock nothing over. Bear with me. That's it for today. I'm trying to get better at this. If you have any questions, shoot me shoot me a message on Remind. My goal this weekend is to set up Google Classroom. Hopefully, students that have the capabilities will be able to communicate with me on Google Classroom solely, not to do it through reminder email. I still got to get these admin classes set up for the weekend as well. I got to figure out what that is. But anyway, that's all coming together. I thank you for watching by. If you got any questions, like I said, shoot me a text. Cotton County's got a football game tonight against Davy Crockett. I'll be there. Go Newport. Yeah. Look for part 3 tomorrow. We'll be looking at society, the everyday life of the average colonist. Until then, everybody take care. Peace.